Hi, I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague Ken Phillips to discuss all things regulatory reporting, financial reporting and of course ESG. Ken, we recently worked on an engagement together where we helped a client with new ESG disclosure requirements. Given that ESG has developed quite rapidly in terms of moving from voluntary to regulatory reporting, can you give us your thoughts in terms of how it's going to coalesce with financial reporting as we move forward in a regulated space?
Sure, morning Sean. So as I think about the financial reporting obligations of our clients, they're wide, they're complex and they require a very large data set to support them. From the engagements we've worked on together, it seems that the ESG requirements will effectively need to be appended on to that data set. So they wouldn't coexist, they'll actually exist as the one unified data set. And that presents a challenge for our clients in terms of they'll have to incorporate this ESG data, these new data points into their reporting data set. Something we've discussed a couple of times is this data from the work we've done together is new, is hard to source, and ultimately is required imminently. So keen to just discuss those points around how new is the data, how hard to source is it, and ultimately when is it required.
So I think it's difficult. I think you're going to have a combination of purchase data from vendors, but then also you'll have to have direct source data depending on which requirement you're looking to fulfill, whether it's under the upcoming GAR requirements or the green asset ratio requirements, or indeed the BTAR requirements, which is obviously specific to banks and goes much further in terms of including SMEs and non-EU, non-financial corporates. I think what was really interesting in terms of the last exercise we did was actually looking at the core FINREP data set, looking at the NACE code mappings, and as you said, starting to layer and build that out. It'd be great to kind of get your thoughts in terms of, now that you've had an insight in terms of some of the ESG data requirements, how you see those fitting together and effectively layering up in order to make sure that financial services firms are compliant with their regulatory disclosures, which of course now are becoming more assurance-led.
Yeah. So as I think about that, one of the key things for all of our clients and all kind of financial services institutions is the consistency between reports, is that they're all internally consistent, which effectively means they need to be sourced from the same data set, the same unified data set. So really, for me, it's about incorporating the new CCAS and any other reporting requirements into your core data set, which is a big ask, because the data set itself is already large and complex. So any new data points that are hard to source or take time to source, will increase the kind of time to market of that data set.
How do you think, in terms of timelines, given what you know today in terms of what's inside the bowels of banks in particular in terms of data, given that we're 9 months out for GAR and about 12 months out from BTAR, what's your thoughts on that?
So we're seeing our client base look at this imminently, because I think with the size and the newness, if you like, or the kind of the new nature of the data requirements, there's quite a long lead time to A, source these and B, incorporate them into a reporting framework. So we're seeing our client base focus on certainly the green asset ratio and taxonomy issues imminently.
So we've talked a lot about data, and I suppose maybe just put some context on it because the data is brand new. As we understand, the data is determined from the test that you've put the loan book through in the case of a bank, which is a series of different tests, all depending on what the purpose of the loan is for, as described under the taxonomy to the technical screening criteria, the do no significant harm and the minimum social safeguards. An issue with data and ESG reporting is that it's viewed a lot of the time, unfortunately, through a voluntary lens, and therefore standards, unfortunately, because of data quality issues and because of the way it's produced, may not be where it needs to be. Now, as it moves into a financial reporting setting, can you give some thoughts on that in terms of, making sure that it's not done in a silo, and of course that it follows best practice, and what your thoughts around that are?
So if we think about, I suppose, the way companies report data, typically it's reported externally after it goes through an internal assurance model. So there's a governance process around data. So for me and for the clients that we've dealt with on this, they've had to incorporate, they've had to source this data, new and all as it is, and then incorporate it into their governance model, and that has been an additional challenge. So you're right, the challenge here for our clients has been sourcing this data, either purchasing it or incepting it, and also governing it and making sure that it's gone through the appropriate rigor for external reporting.
So given the work that we've started doing with clients, Ken, what 2 practical insights would you give to clients today who are starting on the journey?
So the 2 insights I like to leave my clients with on this topic are, firstly, act now. The ask here is to incorporate a complex, hard to source data set into an already very large and complex reporting data set. That takes time, and requires a lot of new processes, a lot of new governance. So I think act now is the first thing. And the second thing is, where possible, do this strategically as opposed to tactically. And what I mean by that is incorporate this new data sourcing, data governance process into your already existing financial reporting process. My advice would be to try and avoid building this in a silo or building it as a tactical process. For me, these CCAS reporting requirements are here to stay, and they're probably going to grow. So it's important to get this data set embedded within your governance and already assured financial reporting data set.
Thanks, Ken. Pleasure as always to catch up with you.
Pleasure, John.